A standard traffic stop, 90 seconds, maybe less. No speeding, no reckless behavior, nothing that would normally trigger concern. Yet by the end of it, that driver walked away without a license for the next 6 months. Not because they acted dangerously, but because they violated a law that didn't even exist 3 weeks earlier. That's the part no one anticipates. The rules didn't just change, they shifted beneath people in real time. And right now, there's one specific law, number 3 on this list, that has already resulted in over 12,000 citations nationwide, with an average fine approaching $500. Most of those drivers had no idea they were doing anything wrong, which raises a larger question. If the system can identify that many people that quickly, how many more are on the road today completely exposed without realizing it? Because these aren't minor updates. This isn't about driving a few miles over the speed limit or rolling through a stop sign. These are structural changes to how you're allowed to drive, where items can be placed inside your car, how your vehicle is monitored, and in some cases, whether your car will even allow you to drive at all. And the most concerning part is this. You can follow every habit you've built over the last 10, 20, even 30 years and still be breaking the law the moment you enter the road. So before assuming everything is fine, there's something you need to see. Because in 2026, the margin for error has essentially disappeared. Hi, I'm Sophia, and I spend a lot of time tracking how driving laws evolve, not just what changes on paper, but how those changes are actually enforced on real drivers like you. And what happened at the start of 2026 isn't typical. This marks the largest shift in driving regulations we've seen in over a decade. Entire states introduced new enforcement systems, redefined what qualifies as a violation, and in some cases deployed technology that monitors driver behavior in ways most people haven't even noticed yet. So if you've been driving as if it's still 2025, there's a strong chance you're already out of compliance without knowing it. And that's exactly how people are getting caught: good drivers, cautious drivers, people who've never had issues before, suddenly facing fines, points, or worse. In this video, I'm going to walk you through all 10 of these new laws, starting with the ones that seem minor but are catching thousands of drivers, all the way up to the top 3 that are causing the most significant financial and legal consequences right now. More importantly, I'll show you exactly what you need to change starting today, so you don't become one of those statistics. Because once you understand how these rules are being enforced, you'll see why so many drivers are being caught off guard, and why the next one on this list is already costing people hundreds of dollars over something that used to feel completely normal. For years, there was an unspoken understanding between drivers and the road itself. That brief moment when a traffic light turns yellow, you had just enough time to clear the intersection. Not anymore. In 2026, that margin has been completely eliminated. 14 states have now synchronized high-resolution enforcement cameras directly with traffic signal systems, calibrated down to the exact millisecond the light turns red. Previously, many of these systems allowed a small buffer, about half a second, giving drivers a realistic opportunity to pass through safely. That buffer no longer exists. Now, if your rear tires are even slightly behind the line when the light turns red, the system automatically registers a violation. No warning, no discretion, no officer to explain your situation, just an instant ticket. And enforcement has become even stricter. These cameras aren't evaluating whether you cross safely. They're measuring position with extreme precision. Your vehicle either crossed in time or it didn't. That's all that matters. In states like Florida and New York, these violations go beyond fines. They're now reported directly to insurance companies. A single mistake at the wrong intersection could quietly cost you far more in increased premiums over the next few years than the ticket itself. What makes this especially risky is how natural the old habit still feels. You see yellow, you judge the distance, you go. But now that instinct works against you. The system is no longer based on human judgment. It's based on exact timing. Which means the safest decision isn't to go, it's to stop every time. Because when the margin for error drops to 0, even a perfect driver can be penalized for doing what was once completely acceptable. And what comes next applies that same zero-tolerance approach, this time inside your vehicle. You've probably heard "don't text and drive" more times than you can count. But in 2026, that rule has evolved into something far stricter and much easier to violate without realizing it. Several states, including California, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, have now shifted to what's called primary enforcement for device handling. That means an officer, or increasingly, an automated system, doesn't need any additional reason to cite you. If a phone is in your hand while your vehicle is on a public roadway, that alone is enough. And yes, that includes when you're stopped. At a red light, in traffic, or even in a drive-through, it doesn't matter. If the engine is on and you're in a roadway environment, holding your phone is now considered a violation. What's catching people off guard is how this is being enforced. AI-assisted cameras mounted on overpasses and patrol vehicles can now detect when a driver is holding a device, even briefly. You don't need to be texting or scrolling. Simply holding the phone is enough. A quick glance down to change a song or check a notification, and you've already crossed the line. The fines themselves are frustrating, but the bigger issue comes afterward. If you're involved in an accident and there's evidence your phone was in your hand, even if you weren't at fault, insurance companies now have greater leverage to argue that you contributed to the situation. That can result in reduced payouts or even denied claims. But it becomes even more precise, and this is where thousands of drivers are being caught without realizing it. Even if your phone isn't in your hand, even if you believe you're following the rules by using a mount, the exact placement of that device inside your car is now regulated in ways that didn't exist before. And what once made you compliant may now be putting you at risk. Until recently, using a phone mount felt like the responsible solution. Keep your hands free, keep your eyes on the road, follow the rules. For a long time, that was enough. But in 2026, that same setup could now be the exact reason you receive a citation, or worse, lose money in a situation you didn't even cause. 17 states have introduced specific placement laws that define exactly where your phone can be positioned inside your vehicle. Not loosely, not generally, precisely. At first, the wording seems straightforward. Your device must not obstruct your view of the road, traffic signals, or pedestrians. Reasonable, right? The issue is how strictly that standard is now applied. In states like California, Arizona, and Florida, mounting your phone in the center of your windshield, even if it's just beneath your rearview mirror, is now considered a violation. That position, used by millions of drivers for years, is now officially classified as obstructing your forward field of vision. The only consistently safe locations are the lower right corner of your windshield or directly on the dashboard. Anywhere else begins to fall into a gray area, and enforcement is no longer treating it as gray. And this isn't just about being pulled over. The real consequences often appear after something goes wrong. There was a case in Phoenix where a driver was rear-ended at a stoplight, completely not their fault. But their phone was mounted in the center of the windshield. When insurance companies reviewed the situation, that detail became part of the evaluation. The argument was simple. The mount placement violated updated state guidelines, suggesting reduced situational awareness. The outcome? Their payout was reduced by 40%. A small setup choice turned into thousands of dollars lost. That's the shift happening here. These laws aren't only enforced on the road, they're being applied afterward to determine liability, responsibility, and how much protection you actually receive. So even if you believe you're safe because you're hand-free, the real question now is, are you positioned legally? Because if not, you're exposed in ways most drivers haven't even considered yet. And that same pattern, where a rule expands beyond what people expect, is exactly what's happening with the next law. Except this time, it's not inside your car. It's how you behave when passing someone else on the road. You already know you're supposed to move over for police cars, ambulances, and emergency vehicles stopped on the shoulder. That's been standard for years. But as of January 2026, that rule has expanded significantly. What's now known as the All-Vehicle Move-Over Law has effectively gone nationwide, applying to far more situations than most drivers realize. If you see any vehicle on the shoulder with hazard lights on, whether it's a stranded driver, a tow truck, a delivery van, or someone changing a tire, you are now legally required to either move out of the nearest lane or significantly reduce your speed. And not just slightly. In many states, you must slow down by at least 20 miles per hour below the posted speed limit if changing lanes isn't possible. On paper, the purpose is clear: protect people who are vulnerable on the roadside. But in practice, enforcement has become far more aggressive than drivers expect. Patrol vehicles are now equipped with side-facing cameras that monitor passing traffic, specifically identifying drivers who fail to move over or slow down sufficiently. And the penalties reflect the seriousness of this rule. In some areas, this is no longer just a traffic infraction. It's classified as reckless endangerment. That means higher fines, license points, and in some cases, mandatory court appearances. What makes this challenging is that not every situation allows for perfect compliance. Heavy traffic, limited space, high-speed lanes, it's not always easy to move over safely. But here's the key: enforcement often depends on how your actions appear from the outside. If you can't change lanes, you need to clearly demonstrate that you're slowing down and responding appropriately. Because from an officer's perspective or a camera reviewing footage later, it's not about your intent. It's about what your behavior looks like. And that shift from intent to visible compliance is showing up across multiple laws this year. Which brings us to the next one, where even something as simple as turning on your windshield wipers can quietly put you in violation if you're not thinking one step ahead. There's a moment most drivers don't even notice. Light rain begins, just enough to slightly blur the windshield. You tap your wipers on, maybe once every few seconds. It feels routine, almost automatic. But in 2026, that small action now carries a legal requirement that's catching thousands of drivers completely off guard. In 29 states, the rule is now absolute. If your windshield wipers are on, your headlights must also be on. No exceptions for time of day. No exceptions for light drizzle. No exceptions for intermittent use. Wipers on means headlights on, period. And enforcement isn't limited to officers on the roadside. In several states, automated systems and traffic cameras can now detect this mismatch. They can identify the motion of your wipers and compare it to your vehicle's lighting status. If your headlights aren't fully activated, including your tail lights, you could receive a ticket in the mail days later, complete with visual evidence. That's what makes this so easy to overlook. There's no immediate stop, no warning. It simply arrives. And here's where many drivers make a critical mistake. They assume daytime running lights are sufficient. They're not. Daytime running lights typically illuminate only the front of your vehicle at reduced brightness. This law requires full headlight activation, including rear lights. If your tail lights aren't on, you're still in violation, even if the front appears illuminated. The fines may seem relatively small, usually between $75 and $200, but that's not the real concern. The real issue is how easily this can happen without you realizing it. A quick use of the wipers, a short drive in light rain, and you've already crossed the line. The simplest solution is to build a habit: wipers on, headlights on every single time. Because as you're starting to see, driving laws in 2026 aren't just about major mistakes. They're designed to capture small, everyday behaviors that were once harmless. And once those small violations begin to accumulate, the consequences escalate much faster than most drivers expect. Because now, it's not just about whether you receive a ticket, it's about how those tickets build over time. And in several major states, the entire system behind your driving record has changed.